Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and it's time to change that quilt in the back. Now, I love the boldness of that red, black, and white together, so I'm going to keep that same color scheme, but I'm going to change up the pattern. I am using fabric that's a tone-on-tone so that it looks like it's a solid color. For example, this fabric from Northcott is called Simply Neutrals. So it's a tone-on-tone, it's going to read black. Same with the white, it's very hard to see, but it's a tone-on-tone. There's a white pattern in here. Now, of course, you can use any colors, but this is what I'm going to use, so let's see what it turns out like. I'll be making 30 of these blocks. They're 10-inch finished blocks. That's going to give me a layout of 6 rows with 5 blocks in each row. And with some borders, it's going to be 61.5 inches by 71.5 inches. I will attach this PDF if you'd like to follow along. The pieces are very, very simple. Every piece is going to equal 2.5 inches. So we're going to be able to cut 26 strips from the white, 13 from the red, and 13 from the black, and then subcut them. We're going to need for those 30 blocks 120 of these 2.5 inches by 6.5 inches and 90 2.5 inch squares. The red, we're only going to need 30 2.5 by 6.5 and 120 2.5 inch squares. And the black is the same as the red. We're going to need 30 2.5 by 6.5 and 120 2.5 inch squares. And that's going to give us all 30 blocks. When I do cut out my blocks, the one thing I do is cut out those larger pieces first. So I have 2.5 inches, that width of fabric, and I'm going to cut those 6.5 inch pieces out. A lot of times I'll be able to get 1 or 2 2.5 inch blocks from the end. And that's just going to save me a little bit of fabric. We will need to take 30 of each of these colors and sew them together. And I would recommend pressing to the darker side. Once that 3-piece unit is done, we're going to put on the red and the black, and these are the 6.5 inch pieces. Have the black at the bottom, so you'll be sewing the black on the left and the red on the right. And that's those 2 pieces right there. When we've finished adding on those 2 edges, we now need to make these longer units. Those units are going to go around. We are going to need 30 with the point going in one direction and 30 with the point going in the other direction. And we will need them both in the red and the black. We're going to start with those 6.5 by 2.5 inch pieces. The 2.5 inch squares will be put on the corners, and the difference will be you're going to sew from one corner going down, but for the second half you're going to sew from this inside going out. When you do that, you're going to have the stitching that looks like this. So when this block gets folded back and trimmed, we do have those 2 different shapes, and they are not intermixable. So we do need to have 30 of each in both the black and the red. And I do have that positioning there for you. They still equal 6.5 inches by 2.5 inches. We just have added on these extra pieces. When we do put on these little points, the points are going to continue going above and below the pattern. So it does look like this black piece is sitting on top, but then it slips underneath the red. And opposite for the red, this one looks like it's sitting on top and this one's going underneath. So we're going to need to take that shape and put it on the side. So we're going to have 2 black, and you can really see that that makes a complete triangle. The 2 red, and that also has that triangle shape. From here we need to add on 4 corners. The 2 white ones will go in between those colored points, A black one will go on the edge of that black, and the red one is going to go up near the red side. The most difficult part about this is making sure we have our points going in the right direction. So keep an eye that you're looking for that triangle. If these were in the wrong area, you can see where you've lost that triangular shape. So to sew them together, we can put those 6.5-inch pieces on each side and then make one long unit here. We have that white piece towards the triangle on both sides. And then if we have a black triangle here, we need a red corner. So we have a red, we will need a black. So then sew those 3 units together, and they're going to just fit together when we get to sew that last seam. And that is the entire block done. The block is now done. You can really see where that block looks like it's woven one color on top of another. This block does equal 10.5 inches, so it's a finished 10-inch block. We can now lay this quilt out, and we do have a couple of options. We can lay this quilt out so all the blocks are facing in the same direction, so that red is going in the same direction. That does make a cute little 4 patch here, and all of the arrows are going in the same direction. But we can switch this up. So we will have the opposite going. So we're going to have a red, a black, a red, and a black, and switch that for the top. So we still have that 4 patch in the corner, but our arrows are changing direction. We can also match up these blocks to become solid colors. So we're going to match the reds together, which means the next corner we'll match the whites together, the blacks together, and so on. This definitely gives us another look. We have that secondary block, and the arrows are pointing into this block. So where the arrows are pointing in, we'll have a red. Where the black arrows are pointing, we'll have a black. No matter which way you put it together, it really is a striking block. I did put mine together so that I have my black squares together and my red squares together. And you can see where this takes its own shape and this takes its own shape. And now I'm going to add 2 simple borders. The first one, I'm going to choose one of the main colors, and in this case I will do the red. They're cut at 2 inches. And that's the first border that's going to go all the way around. Then I will be adding on a second border. It will be that white and cut at 4.5 inches. When I finish quilting this, I will do a black binding. So I'm going to repeat those 3 colors in the border that I have in the quilt. So let me get that 2-inch cut border and the 4.5-inch cut border on the quilt for you to see. Those borders really do finish that off nicely. Now that that quilt top is done, I'm going to need to get it quilted so I can get it on the wall behind me. This was a fun block to make. It's definitely a lot easier than it looks. And it can be made in many different fabrics. The red and the black are very strong colors against that white, and that gives it a lot of dimension. But it's just as nice in some soft pastel colors. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and I do have a newsletter, all under Sew Very Easy. I'll put it in the description below. And I will also put that little handout with my notes on how to make this. And when you do print out these little handouts that I put in the description, you will need to open them up on a computer. A lot of small electronics will not open up PDFs, so be sure to go to your computer and print that out. And then you can have fun making the block as well. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.